I still remember the sound of her laugh, low, hesitant, like someone rediscovering what it felt like to be seen. When I first met Clara, she wasn't the kind of woman who drew attention. Not anymore, at least. She dressed in quiet colors, navy, gray, beige, the kind of palette that hides emotion. She managed the marketing floor, and I was just the new hire who somehow kept catching her eye during meetings. It started small, the kind of small that ruins people. One late evening, I stayed behind to finish a project no one cared about. The office lights hummed above, and she was there, alone, fingers tracing the rim of her cold coffee mug. She looked tired in the way only people who've lived through love can look. When she asked if I wanted to walk out together, I said yes, even though my laptop wasn't shut, even though it wasn't really a question. We didn't talk much that night, just walked under the flickering streetlights that stretched shadows across the pavement. I told her about growing up by the coast, how the sea always smelled different after rain. She smiled faintly and said, "That's the kind of detail people forget to notice." From then on, I noticed everything. The way she brushed her hair behind her ear when she didn't want to answer something. The pause before she said my name. The moments she'd linger by my desk pretending to ask about work, when we both knew it wasn't about work. She told me once that her husband was kind, but distant. I told her I didn't know how to stop thinking about her. She didn't tell me to stop. And so it began. A rhythm of stolen mornings and secret lunches, of soft laughter echoing through empty corridors. She'd leave lipstick on my coffee mug and act like she hadn't. I'd watch her check her phone too often, waiting for messages she no longer wanted to read. There were rules, unspoken ones. No texts after midnight. No calls on weekends. No, "I miss you." But sometimes rules break themselves. I'd find myself outside her apartment, standing under her window, pretending I was just passing by. Once, she came down in a long coat and bare feet, looked at me like she'd been waiting, and said nothing. We just stood there, the kind of silence that says everything. She made me feel older. I made her feel young. Somewhere in the middle, we lost track of what it meant to be right. It wasn't love at first, it was something more dangerous. Need, escape, recognition. Whatever name you give it, it burned slow like paper curling under fire. One night, while she was lying on my chest, she said, "Do you ever think this could last?" I didn't answer. I didn't want to lie. Instead, I kissed the back of her hand, the same hand with a wedding ring she never took off. That was the first time she cried in front of me. She told me she'd been drafted to write an internal email to the board, something about budget changes. She asked if I could make it sound honest. She trusted me with the wording, with her reputation, with everything. And I did. Too well. Because the next morning, when her husband, who worked in IT, saw the message, I realized he hadn't been distant. He'd been watching. And just as I was about to call her, my phone buzzed. A single text from her husband. I didn't open the email right away. My hands wouldn't move. The morning light slanted through the blinds, cutting across my desk in thin, cruel lines. Outside, the city was already awake. Horns, footsteps, the hum of people pretending their lives made sense. Mine didn't anymore. When I finally clicked, I saw it, the message we'd written together, now forwarded to half the senior board, her husband included. The phrasing, the tone, it was too personal, too transparent. It sounded like us. The way we spoke when no one else was listening. Clara called a few minutes later. Her voice trembled, calm, but in that practiced way people sound when they're holding a door shut against a storm. "They fired us both," she said. "Effective immediately." There was a pause. Then softer. "He did it on purpose." I could hear her trying not to cry. The static between us filled the silence like a heartbeat. Later that afternoon, we met at a cafe miles away from the office. She wore sunglasses, though it wasn't bright. Her hair tied up messily like she hadn't slept. "I should have known," she said, stirring her untouched coffee. "He's been reading my emails for months. I thought I was careful." "You were," I said, though we both knew she wasn't. Neither of us were. She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes had that tired shimmer, the kind people carry after years of quiet disappointment. She'd been married 20 years. Married young. She told me once that her husband used to bring her flowers every Friday until he stopped, until silence became routine. And me, I'd never been anyone's secret before. I was 26, too eager, too certain I could save her from something I didn't even understand. Maybe that's what she loved or hated about me. You remind me of who I used to be, she whispered. I wanted to tell her she reminded me of who I wanted to become, but I didn't. The words stuck somewhere between pride and fear. We sat there a long time, the world moving around us. Clinking cups, laughter from another table, a baby crying somewhere near the window. All that normal life happening while ours had quietly fallen apart. Finally, she reached across the table and brushed her thumb along the edge of my wrist, barely touching. You should hate me, she said. I tried. I whispered. Her hand stayed there a second longer than it should have. Then she withdrew, eyes glistening. The door opened behind us. A rush of cold air, a sound like something ending. But for a brief second, as she looked at me over her shoulder, I saw it. Not guilt, not fear, just longing. That impossible, human kind of longing that makes you forget what comes next. The week after we were fired, everything blurred. Days bled into nights. My inbox emptied. My phone buzzed without purpose. I thought losing my job would feel like an ending, but it felt more like being suspended midair. Like waiting for something that wasn't supposed to happen. Clara disappeared for 3 days. No texts, no calls. The world felt heavier without her messages lighting up my phone at 2 a.m. with things like, "Are you still awake?" Or, "I can't sleep again." When she finally called, her voice was quiet, shaky, like she'd been rehearsing calm but lost the script halfway through. "He knows," she said. "He found the photos." My chest tightened. "What photos?" "The ones from your camera. The lake. The cabin. The lake. That weekend last month when we drove 3 hours north under the excuse of a team retreat. She'd packed sandwiches. I'd packed a camera. I'd taken a dozen photos of her. Her hair caught in sunlight, her smile half hidden behind her scarf. Nothing scandalous. Just intimate. Real. How? He got into my cloud backup. She cut me off. He's furious, but he's quiet. That's worse. I could hear her breathing, uneven. Then, I think he followed me yesterday. That night, I couldn't stop pacing my apartment. My roommate, Nate, noticed. "You good, man?" he asked. I almost said yes. Instead, I said, "Do you ever get so close to something that you know you're about to ruin it, but you still keep walking?" He stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "Bro, that sounds like a you problem." He wasn't wrong. The next evening, Clara came to my place. She hadn't been there since before everything blew up. Her hair was wet from rain. Her coat clung to her shoulders. She looked at me like she was about to apologize, but instead she stepped forward and said, "I didn't know where else to go." Her voice cracked on the word go. I let her in, shut the door, and for a moment we just stood there in the dim hallway. Two people who had burned their bridges and still couldn't stop looking back at the fire. She laughed softly. "I can't believe I'm here." "You don't have to be," I said. "I know. That's why I am." We didn't touch. Not yet. The air between us was electric in the quietest way possible. She walked to the window, wiped the condensation with her sleeve. "Do you ever think," she began, "that maybe we were supposed to meet, just not like this?" Her reflection in the glass looked younger, almost peaceful. Mine looked guilty. "I think about it all the time," I said. She turned around. "My husband said something last night." "What?" "He said he wanted to talk to you." I froze. "He what?" "He called you a boy pretending to be a man." I almost laughed, but her face told me not to. "He's wrong," I said. "I told him that," she murmured. Hours passed like seconds. We sat on the couch, barely talking. Every small movement, her brushing a strand of hair, me refilling her tea, felt too charged, too dangerous. I wanted to say everything I shouldn't. She wanted to believe something she couldn't. When she stood to leave, I followed her to the door. The rain outside had softened into drizzle. She reached for the doorknob but didn't turn it. I should go, she whispered. I know, but I don't want to. Something in me broke then, that invisible thread I'd been holding taut between guilt and desire. Clara? I said her name like it was a confession. She turned slightly, her face inches from mine. The smell of her perfume, faint, familiar, filled the space between us. My hand brushed hers by accident or instinct. I couldn't tell. She didn't move away. Don't, she breathed. I wasn't going to. Yes, you were. She smiled sadly, and that was worse than tears. Then, from outside, a car engine idled, low and steady. Her eyes widened. He's here. I moved to the window. A dark sedan sat across the street. Headlights dimmed. A shadow inside. Stay here, I said. She shook her head. If he sees me, let him, I almost said. But she was already slipping out the back door, her footsteps light, her coat still damp. The door clicked shut. The apartment felt smaller without her, like the walls had exhaled. I waited by the window, heart pounding, until the car finally pulled away. An hour later, my phone buzzed. A text from her. I think I made things worse. Don't come near the house. I typed back 3 times, deleted each reply. Finally, I sent, I'm not letting you do this alone. No answer. The rain started again, tapping against the glass like it knew something I didn't. And when I looked up from my phone, I saw it. An envelope slid under my door, wet at the corners. My name written in her handwriting. Inside, one photo, the lake, her hand on mine, the ring on her finger catching sunlight. And on the back, in smudged ink, he knows everything. Please don't come tomorrow. But the problem was, tomorrow was already here. I didn't sleep that night. The envelope sat on the table like something alive, accusing, waiting. I must have read her note 100 times, tracing the smudged words until they blurred. He knows everything. By dawn, I'd already decided I was going. The sky was gray, the kind of color that makes the world look suspended between storm and silence. Her house sat at the end of a narrow street, shutters closed, car gone. The quiet was wrong, too still. I knocked once. No answer. Twice. Then her voice, low and strained, from inside. You shouldn't be here. When she opened the door, her eyes were red, like she'd been crying for hours. She didn't invite me in, but I stepped forward anyway. Clara, what's happening? He found everything. The photos, the emails, the hotel receipts. She stopped, swallowing hard. He said he'll ruin you if I don't leave you. I don't care. You should, she said. You have a life ahead of you. Don't say it, I interrupted, sharper than I meant to. She looked at me then, really looked. You think this is love? I wanted to say yes, but the word caught in my throat, too small for everything that had happened. She laughed, a soft, broken sound. You're just a kid who mistook chaos for connection. And you're a woman who's been starving for attention so long you forgot what it feels like to be touched without guilt. I shot back. The words hit harder than I expected. For both of us. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Silence stretched between us, tight and trembling. Then she stepped closer, eyes wet, whispering, Don't make this harder. I can't stop, I said. Not when I finally found something real. She shook her head, but her hands betrayed her. One brushed against mine, fingers trembling. That tiny touch felt like confession, defiance, and apology all at once. Clara, I breathed. She closed her eyes, took a small step closer. Her voice was barely a whisper. He's watching. He installed cameras. He said if you come here again. A sound cut her off, the faint click of a car door outside. Her eyes flew open. He's home. My heart slammed against my ribs. Then I'll leave. No, she said, grabbing my wrist. If he sees you, it's over for both of us. The tension between us was unbearable. Her breath shallow, her grip firm. Then tell me to go, I whispered. Tell me this meant nothing. She hesitated too long. Outside, Footsteps on the porch. The key turning. Clara! She met my eyes, tears trembling in the corners. Hide! She mouthed. The door handle twisted, and before I could move, she leaned forward, close enough for her breath to brush my lips, and whispered, I'm sorry. Then the door opened. The door opened slowly, too slowly, like someone already knew what waited inside. Her husband stood there, tall still, not angry in the way I expected. Worse, calm. That terrible kind of calm that comes from certainty. He glanced at me first, then at Clara. I thought I told you, he said, voice low. If he came here again. Clara's grip on my wrist tightened. Please, she said. It's not what you think. He smiled, not kindly. It's exactly what I think. He stepped inside, set his keys down with deliberate precision. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then he looked at me. You're wondering how I knew you'd come back. I said nothing. My throat felt like sandpaper. He reached into his coat pocket and tossed something onto the table. My phone. I froze. How? Clara gave it to me, he said. Last night. The room tilted. That's not true, I whispered. But she wouldn't look at me. She said she wanted to protect you, he continued. Said she'd do anything to make this stop. My chest tightened. Confusion, anger, disbelief. Clara? She finally looked up, tears glinting in her eyes. He said he'd report you to the police. Said he had evidence you. She broke off, shaking. I just wanted to keep you safe. By betraying me? I said quietly. Her voice cracked. I didn't know what else to do. For a second, I almost believed her, until her husband slid a printed document across the counter. An email, addressed from her account to mine. Subject, let's make it official. Body, I'll tell him tonight. We can finally be together. Except I hadn't received that message. I looked at her again. You wrote this? She shook her head. No. He made me. He drafted it. Said he'd send it to your new employer if I didn't sign. Her husband shrugged. Call it insurance. I just wanted to see how far the fantasy would go. Something inside me snapped. You're destroying her. He turned to me, eyes cold. She destroyed herself. I took a step forward. You don't get to... Stop, Clara said suddenly, voice sharp. Please, don't make this worse. That was when I saw it. The bruise on her wrist, faint but new. I reached out instinctively, but she pulled back, shaking her head. Just go, she whispered. I hesitated at the door, rain starting again outside, the kind that felt like punishment. As I reached for the handle, her husband spoke one last time. Check your email when you get home, he said. You'll find something interesting. When I did, later that night, I understood. There was a new message from her, time-stamped 10 minutes after I'd left. For words only, don't believe anything, and below it, a video attachment. The video loaded in fragments, shaky, dim, the kind of recording made in a rush. The image flickered between focus and blur, but it was her, Clara, sitting on the edge of her bed, eyes swollen, whispering into the camera like she was afraid someone might hear. If you're seeing this, I didn't tell the truth, she began. He made me sign those emails, said he'd leak everything, even the photos. He's not angry about the affair. He's angry he wasn't the one who ended it first. Her breath caught. She looked toward the door, then back. I thought I could fix it by lying. I thought maybe if you hated me, you'd move on and he'd stop. But I can't live with that. I just needed you to know I never stopped choosing you, even when it ruined everything. The video ended abruptly. A faint sound, a door opening, her turning her head, and then static. I watched it twice, maybe 3 times, before I realized I was shaking. Every word she said felt heavier than the air around me. By morning, I was standing outside her house again. The rain had stopped, but the street still smelled of it. Cold and clean, like something was about to break. The curtains were drawn. The car gone. I knocked anyway. No answer. Then, as I turned to leave, her voice, faint, came from behind the door. You shouldn't have come back. Clara, opened the door. I said. I can't. I saw the video. Silence. Then the lock clicked. Slow, hesitant. She looked smaller than I remembered. Pale, eyes ringed with sleeplessness. You shouldn't have seen that. Why not? I asked. Because it was true? She didn't answer. Instead, she pressed her back against the door, arms crossed tightly like she was holding herself together. He's gone, she said finally. Packed a bag, said I was his mistake to fix. But I know him. He's not done. I stepped closer. Then leave with me. We can disappear. Start over. She laughed softly, bitter, beautiful. You still think love fixes things? No, I said. But it makes them worth breaking for. Her eyes softened then, just a little. She reached out, brushed her fingers along my jaw. You'll regret this one day, she whispered. I already do, I said. But not enough to stop. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The air between us pulsed with everything unsaid. The guilt, the longing, the fear. Then she leaned in, her forehead resting against mine, breath trembling. This isn't a happy ending, she said. I don't need happy, I whispered. I just need real. Outside, a car door slammed loud, close. Her eyes widened. He's back. And before she could move, I kissed her. Not out of courage, but out of inevitability. When we broke apart, she looked at me like she already knew the cost. Go, she said. Now. The door swung open behind her. The morning sunlight slipped through the blinds, cutting pale ribbons across the wooden floor. The city outside moved on as if nothing had happened, as if two lives hadn't changed forever the night before. Elena sat by the window, a steaming mug in her hands. Her eyes looked distant, fixed on something only she could see. The storm of emotions, guilt, longing, relief, had settled into a heavy, aching calm. She wasn't sure if it was peace or just exhaustion. A soft knock came at the door. Michael stepped in quietly. No words, just the quiet between them that said everything words couldn't. His shirt was still half-buttoned, hair tousled, face drawn with a mix of regret and tenderness. I didn't want to leave like that, he said finally. Elena didn't turn. But you did. He hesitated, then crossed the room, stopping just a few feet away, the invisible boundary that had always kept them apart. Because if I stayed, he said softly, I would have said things I couldn't take back. Her fingers tightened around the mug. You already did. Silence again. Not the kind that was empty, but the kind that held too much. Michael exhaled, slow and uncertain. I thought I knew what I wanted. But it's not just about what I want anymore. Is it? Elena finally looked at him, eyes red, lips trembling. No, she whispered. It's about what we'll destroy if we keep pretending we can have both. He took another step closer. So that's it? After everything? She met his gaze, and for a moment the world held still. Maybe it's not the end, she said quietly. Maybe it's just the only way to save what's left of us. Michael looked at her, really looked, as if memorizing the curve of her face, the way her hair caught the light. Then slowly he nodded. You'll always be the one I almost chose, he said. Tears slipped down her cheeks, silent and unstoppable. And you'll always be the one I never forgot. He smiled, a broken, beautiful thing, and walked to the door. He didn't look back. Elena sat there long after he was gone, the echo of his footsteps fading down the hall. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Outside, a car horn blared. A child laughed. The world kept spinning. She reached for her phone and typed a